Right, with two deputies, Deputy Le Herissier and Deputy Pitman. We're discussing scrutiny, past, present and future. Hopefully we're going to whiz through the past and the present and look more at the future, I hope. But you've both been active at various times in scrutiny. 1 out of 10, how do you rate it now? Is it good or bad? 10 being good, how do you rate the system now, 1 to 10?
I would probably rate it at about 6 out of 10. I think there are some very positive aspects to scrutiny. It still struggles, partly a resource issue and partly a role issue, you know, and to what extent should it be more assertive in the way it operates? To what extent should it get a better balance between what I would call big policy reviews and hard-hitting short reviews? And to what extent also should it keep up a running commentary, you know, on major sort of laws and major policies that come from the departments it's tasked with investigating. It's a bit unfortunate, and Trevor no doubt will address this issue, it's a bit unfortunate that some members have felt disillusioned with it and are not playing, you know, a role directly in it at the moment. I actually think it's got a lot of potential, but I am well aware there is a very fine line between being a critical friend over the top of the ministries with which you're working and actually coming up with good, focused, evidenced reports which could be embarrassing to that ministry.
Deputy Pitman, disillusioned, 1 out of 10, what do you reckon?
It's hard to generalise because you're going to have panels that are good and doing a good job. People like Deputy John Young, I think. He's probably the best of the new members, to be honest. But generally, I'd probably give it about 3 out of 10. I mean, that's not all the members' fault at the end of the day. A lot of it lies with the setting up. It's another example of what happens when you cherry pick, as we know. Really needs a party system to work in. Main fault with it, I think, lies apart from that, lies with the people. You know, you need backbone. You need 3 things to be a politician. You need a good mind, good principles, and you need some backbone. And backbone is almost universally missing within the States Assembly.
In other places, obviously the UK, we look at the UK because we know it, but they do have investigative press, or in all manner, radio, newspapers, lots and lots of lobby groups, very well-informed lobby groups, professional people, doctors, lawyers, all lobbying on issues when they come up, investigating, scrutinising before things become laws or when laws are being discussed. And within government itself, there's all layers of, obviously, a party system, at party level things are done, policies are done, the layers of scrutiny which take place before it gets to select committees and all the rest of it. It doesn't happen in Jersey. Jersey has got a huge problem to try and do scrutiny strictly at government level. Is it? I mean, realistically, can it be done?
I think it can be done in some circumstances. I mean, one of the paradoxes of scrutiny is, Mark, you're told you shouldn't deal with highly political issues because people will be partisan, you know, their positions will already be known. That is a difficult issue. But given at one level we try and run a consensus government in Jersey, although I know there are grave doubts about that, but let's just say for the moment we do try and run a consensus government. We should all be able to sit around a table and pull, for example, health policy apart, pull to some extent economic policy. Yes, there are some people, for example, if you were looking at the public ownership of a utility, there are some people who've got very strong and fixed views about public ownership, that you should not consider privatising certain services. You know, if you're going to improve them, you should only improve them within the context of them being public, for example. But I don't tend to fully agree with your view that because other systems have got layers upon layer of scrutiny, it operates, you know, in a good background. I mean, there are an awful lot of issues that come up to UK select committees that have never been picked up by the system at an earlier point.
The point about consensus government, Deputy Pitman, because obviously you're of the left politically. Now, this is a Thatcherite free market capitalist government we have in Jersey, and that's the official line. It's become the official way of thinking. Yeah. Now, if you're of the left and you want to challenge basic issues, within the scrutiny system there isn't really the scope to do it. If it's a consensus, in other words, the scrutiny topics come down, not to be challenged, but to be made to work. Now, if you fundamentally, politically disagree with them, you don't want them to work, because that's your politics, isn't it?
Well, a point I was going to finish on before was that really you've got to come to the conclusion that scrutiny was set up deliberately to fail, and you've really hit the nail on the head. You see people like Deputy Southern, for instance, criticised just because his scrutiny panel will be taking an alternative view. Now, often that'll be completely a valid view, but it'll immediately be shouted down by the far right. You're not concurring with what they want to do, so you're really hiding to nothing. Scrutiny becomes opposition, which obviously isn't meant to be strict opposition. But I think that one of the big problems is, and you're talking about disillusionment, for people like me, I was one of only 11 who saw through my first term of office. Put many, many hours, in the wee small hours, even working on scrutiny issues, as did Roy. And then you put it forward and it's completely dismissed. There's no serious consideration. You well remember the reaction of the Home Affairs Minister to a very moderate proposal on the Prison Board of Visitors and durance. So you come to the conclusion, if this has got no teeth, why am I doing this? I've got a very big constituent portfolio, as do some others. You can use your time better to do that, or to do propositions. So I think you're probably right that it almost can't succeed in the present atmosphere.
Well, the whole idea of scrutiny matters here is the new Tracy Valois, who I invited, in fact, to participate in this, didn't even get a reply from. And there she said she wants to, the old story, want to engage with the public. But to my perception, that's the last thing they want to do is engage with. They want to engage with people and share their views. And basically the views are the views that come down. So this idea of the Philip Balash view of not having disagreements on scrutiny, make it all smooth and passive and all, and everybody's nice to each other, and in fact reducing the amount of public participation, because that leads to discussion and argument and disagreement. And that seems to be the whole thing to me, and I'm expressing my own views, that it's designed to take out the argument and discussion out of the system. They want just agreement and just rubber stamping, basically. They want scrutiny which rubber stamps.
Well, thank you, Jerry. It's unfortunate if they do. I can see why that view has taken hold, Mike, because obviously we have been afraid of proper discussion on this issue. Of that, there's no doubt. And of course we don't run on a party political sense, and of course there is this real fear that if party politics were to take over, we would suffer a fate worse than death. Your case may be correct, but I think it's still possible for a scrutiny panel to take a strong view, to say, for example, that the House Service could have been reorganised in another way, the Education Service can be reorganised in another way, and this is why we think so. We have looked at the experience of other jurisdictions. That's often a very good benchmark to push your case. We have consulted academic experts in the area, who've brought different models to our attention, blah, blah, blah. But I'm struggling because ultimately, I suppose, I have to agree with Trevor in the sense that it boils down to your view of society and your view of the role of government in society. And for some people, there are certain lines that cannot be crossed. For example, they would not tolerate a society where everything is privatised, or they would not tolerate a society where the education system doesn't allow for a lot of social mobility, or whatever.
Of course, Jersey's been in the so-so fortunate position as being money coming out of its ears for a long time. That money is no longer coming out of our ears. The crunch is coming on lots of things, and fundamental questions are now being asked, which were never asked previously, about how to distribute the diminishing amount of money. In other words, as you were having this week about survivors' pensions, who shall have a survivor's pension, these questions weren't asked in the past. But now they're being discussed in a way that's never happened before. But that discussion still fundamentally isn't going down to scrutiny, is it? Because there's nobody asking, my perception, the left-wing view of society. Nobody's asking. They're all taking the privatise, user pays, they're all accepting that line of thinking.
Well, you can say that that's the fault of the left, because as you've pointed out, most of us decided to have no more contribution to scrutiny. But the fact is, the only reason some of these things have been talked about is because now it's been reported by people like yourself, Voice for Children, Rico Sorda, myself, Deputy Tadia. we could highlight very major issues within Scrutiny, and we did, and they'll just be swept under the carpet. Nobody wants to debate it in there because it challenges the status quo. The mainstream media, which is basically the mouthpiece for the establishment, don't report it. You look at the biggest probably report in my view, which was the BDO review, completely destroyed the myth that had been spun about Power and Harper's oversight of Operation Rectangle. Nobody wants to report it because it challenges the status quo. And I think, to be fair, now it's even worse because you've got so many people deferring to Senator Philip Balash. The fate worse than death will be if that man ever becomes Chief Minister, as he is in all but name anyway.
You